There is professional responsibility. In law school, there's professional responsibility classes. The standard there is that he should have known better. He went out and did it anyway. And not only did he do it once, but he did it twice. Actions have repercussions. And in this day and age with the internet and social media, a lot of people don't feel those repercussions. And so they think that they're free to do and act and say things in a certain manner.
Let it feel mature. Damn, girl, how many pussies you...
I'm not even a woman, and I feel just like, who is this person to even be speaking about women anatomy in the way that he is? It's just not professional. Could you imagine dating this guy? Medicine,
law, friendship. This is Dr. Long and Lawyer Nick. You're listening to the Medical Legal Brief.
one doctor, one lawyer, and a whole lot of gray area.
Welcome back to the Medical Legal Brief, where medicine meets the law. I'm Lawyer Nick with Dr. Long, and today we have an exciting discussion. I'm personally excited about it because I know we talk a lot about the medical on here, but when we can bring the legal in, I actually really enjoy it. It's going to be a First Amendment discussion, but we're also going to bring in social media as our main focal point. We've had this discussion. Recently, we had a clip actually go viral, and it brings a new dynamic to not just our content creation, our podcasting, but also our professional lives. I want to get your opinion as you've gone through medical school, as you've gone through residency, and as you are a practicing doctor. How has social media and content creation influence the industry that you sit in?
A lot. It can make or break you. It could be a completely new side gig and be another source of income. It's actually allowed some physicians who are nearing the end of their medical career to completely transition and retire early. Those are all great things about social media. However, that also comes with a lot of negatives. Social media comes with instant notifications. You can instantly go viral. Your clip can be taken out of context. Whatever you say can be taken out of context. It's really important that when we create the content that we do, that we stay as factual and as neutral as possible. And that's always my goal. I don't want to go out and disparage any particular group of people. My goal is only to inform and educate. And honestly, that's why I was never really on social media until we had this conversation about creating this podcast, because I always wanted to make sure I had a friend, a buddy that would then check my work, basically be a second set of eyes, and make sure that I wasn't doing something that maybe I thought was normal, but then you think that it's completely not right. Like, there's always that safety net there for me.
Even as we went through high school and then college, I hear my parents or I hear peers or friends or family making statements of, well, be careful what you post on Facebook because it might come back and haunt you. Be careful what you post on social media. And we grew up in the MySpace phase. We had MySpace and then we had Facebook. Somewhere in there were online journals, but it's a wild concept that even now, 15, 20 years later, the digital footprint has the ability to haunt you. It also has the ability to throw in some benefits. If you're posting very good content and you're consistent with the post and you are, striving to be an influencer, or maybe you're not even striving to be an influencer, you just want to share your thoughts and ideas and put them out into the public domain, you can benefit from it, not only financially, but from reputation. There are people that just from their very insight, their posts, their beliefs have been able to be hired by major companies, run for political office, end up being really big celebrities or influencers or leaders in the public. There's a lot of pros and cons to our discussion today, and I'm excited to really jump into it.
Yeah, I sent you a couple of these clips that have gone viral for other reasons, negative reasons, and I was curious to get your lawyer perspective on the situation, because it's something that I honestly worry about all the time, especially when things do blow up for us, whether that's on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube. I'm always worried about, okay, is it blowing up in a good way or a bad way?
Yeah. And I want to lay the legal framework because this is the one thing that everybody shouts. They'll shout to the high heavens. Well, I have First Amendment protected speech. It's my constitutional right. I have First Amendment protected speech. I could say whatever I want, wherever I want, to whoever I want. But what a lot of people don't understand is that is government censorship. The government can't come in and censor your speech. There are some exceptions to it, but people think that they can go out and say things or do things or post things online and that their repercussions are protected because of that notion of First Amendment protected speech. But what they don't realize is that there are private corporations, there are educational systems, there are friends and family that are able to have an opinion and in some instances able to provide real world repercussions. It's important to establish that framework as we discuss this, because I'm going to be speaking in context of, well, the government may not be able to censor it, but you can get in trouble with some other people or other institutions if you're not careful.
Right. We're going to show the clip now for the audience then.
Yep.
I'm going to give a little bit of a context here. I'm not going to name the student. However, for context, it is a fourth year medical student that was a student at Mayo, very well renowned school educational system, that had posted a couple of videos on TikTok or Instagram that did go viral in not the most savory way. We're going to have a discussion on whether it was appropriate to get the outcome that he got, and if it was worth posting. Did he get the clout that he needed? And what happens now? And how does that change our perspective in terms of our podcast and the content that we put out moving forward?
Snapchat me that pussy. Ooh. Oh, FaceTime me that pussy if it's cool.
Okay, Long, you said that this was a medical student?
Yeah, fourth year medical students. This guy was 3 or 4 months away from actually graduating medical school and getting his MD degree.
Okay, I enjoy content. Everybody has a right to put out content. I have a large barrier from what I'm offended by. Comedy should be taken for what comedy is, even if the jokes are a little too much one way or the other. I get worried about this post or this video, given the background that this is, or I guess was, a medical student. When you're looking at prestigious professions, and we've talked about in a recent podcast, there's a standard there. And this is not something that you necessarily want your future doctors of America to be involved in or sharing it. I could see it being offensive. That is insane.
Yeah, the thing that worries me is that no matter what profession or what specialty he would have gone into, he would have had to deal with women. And that was exactly the subject of his content in that particular clip, is disparaging women. And that's why it's so troubling. He didn't have the foresight or the understanding or the insight to understand why he did what he did was wrong. And we'll talk about it more, but there is another clip and he kind of doubles down, sort of misogynistic, if you want to say it, or just making light of women's ailments. And it's just unsavory.
Obviously, with us being podcasters and content creators, my feed is full of doctor and lawyer jokes, and some of them are dark jokes, some of them are very lighthearted. This is one where his caption, "I can't tell if it's discharge or a yeast infection." That's a fair quote. I've gone in, and granted, not discharge or a yeast infection, but I've had a similar, "I can't tell if it's this or that." And then we actually talk about the fact that telehealth is becoming an important thing. I have FaceTimed you and said, "Hey, this is what's going on." You'd be like, "All right, well, let me look at your eye, or let me look at the rash on your daughter's arm." The aspect of FaceTiming to get real world information is fine. I think where he crosses the line is with the music. Obviously, it seems a little inappropriate. And then also with his general reaction to it from the video perspective. If it was just, "I can't tell if it's discharge or a yeast infection," and there was a iPad next to it, it might be okay, because that's a real world situation that a lot of doctors are dealing with now from a telehealth perspective. But it's just the other extremes that happen that are off-putting.
This holds true for not just physicians, but even comedians. It's better to make fun of yourself or your profession than it is to make fun of other people. If we're making fun of a physician or a nurse, potentially, or anyone working in the medical field, patients are going to see that as more of poking fun of the situation. But when you start picking things out from the patient perspective, that is literally disparaging the patient population that the physician is supposed to be taking care of. Then we worry about biases or negative connotations that they already have in their mind before they even set foot into a patient room.
I like you bringing the comedic aspect into it, because as a comedian, that is your profession. You are in the business to try to make people laugh. Whether you're poking fun at yourself or poking fun at others, you will understand how far you take it based on the opinions expressed back to you. If people really, really, really like your comedy, you're going to probably go far. If people really, really hate your comedy, you're probably not going to be as successful. If you're making a joke that fits the taste of one region or demographic or set of people, great. It may not be for everybody, but then you got to have to live with that balance. But that's what comedians and performers and all that look for. For him, if his goal is to be an influencer and go viral and get likes and be funny and be like, hey, I'm the guy who got kicked out of medical school. I never really wanted to be a doctor, but I'm going to keep making these videos and provide comedy to the rest of the world, especially those that want to see some comedic sides to medicine. This might be his forte, but it's the nature again of the intent and his position and what he's trying to achieve that's just super concerning. If you're down for it, I'm interested to see this next video, and I'm hoping it's better, but at this point, I don't think it's going to be.
My understanding is he doubled down, and that's really where he got in trouble. He created a similar clip with the same sort of subject, and it didn't go over well.
Okay, let's watch.
Clitoris? Labia majora? Damn, girl, how many pussies you got?
I'm not even a woman, and I feel just like, who is this person to even be speaking about women anatomy in the way that he is? It's just not professional. Could you imagine dating this guy? Just this persona that he's put off does not make him look like a good guy or a nice guy in any way.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm not defending him, but I'm sure with what he is joking about is probably something that occurs in medicine. You're dealing with bodies, you're dealing with people with a wide array of bodies, a wide array of medical problems. I'm sure there are things that feel a little unsavory that I'm back rooms you can joke about with other doctors. And we talked about the poop instances that nurses and doctors have to deal with. That's not a savory topic. Poop is not a sexy topic, but I'm sure there are a lot of jokes around it, such as the code brown. Somebody had a mess in their room or had a mess on their self. I'm sure there are people that might look at this and chuckle to themselves and say, I get what he's saying. This is kind of funny. But again, he's attempting to profit either from a societal perspective or a financial perspective off something that is extremely offensive, and the way he goes about it too. Again, the nature of his caption here, I don't think that's very insulting, but he actually uses almost the view from the inside of a woman, which is just disturbing. The fact that he took it that extra step. And then on top of it, the audio that he uses that's in such poor taste based on what he's trying to get across in this video.
I wouldn't have had any pushback if this was a more serious video where he was potentially educating the population on, when you're trying to put in a catheter, these are some of the other areas that you could accidentally put the catheter in. That would be a completely different scenario, a different vibe. But the way he's done it here is just in poor taste.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're maximizing your influencer status by making fun of things that probably should be made fun of in the context of you trying to be a doctor and try to make do in this profession. I would not want him to be my doctor. I would not want him to be my wife's doctor. I would not want him to be my daughter's doctor. I would want him as far away from any sort of medicine that I'm associated with. Now, could he be a comedian and influencer and make funny videos and do stupid stuff, and I might give it a listen? Maybe. I struggle with the fact that this is what's leading into the profession. If you were just going over insulting medical videos, I'd be like, it's just some guy. But what he's trying to achieve is tantamount to our discussion today.
And that's the thing. Professionalism is a huge class that we actually have to go through during medical school, where we learn professionalism. How do we dress? How do we act? How do we speak to patients? How do we speak to other colleagues? Those are things that we learn day to day, and there are formal classes for it. It's interesting to see this get blown up because of social media, because had he not posted this, no one would have ever known that these were his thoughts or his perspectives on the subject matter. If he hadn't been an influencer, no one would have known better, and he would have become a doctor and gone out and treated patients. It's quite interesting that it's only come to the light because of social media and the age that we are currently living in. But with that said, the word on the street is that he actually got expelled from medical school. I think it was about 1 or 2 weeks prior to the match, which is when you find out which residency you get into, and then he's 3 to 4 months away from actually graduating. So I'm curious from you, Lawyer Nick, whether you feel, as a civilian, not as a lawyer, but as a civilian, do you feel the outcome, the expulsion, was appropriate For someone who has already dedicated, remember, he had to do 4 years of college and then has now done 3 and 3/4 of medical school and was going to become a doctor, and he had dedicated all that time and all that student debt. Was it appropriate for Mayo to then let him go?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And here's the reason. I believe that accountability, personal accountability, is absolutely paramount to being a successful human being, with the way you treat other people, with the way other people treat you, and the success you find in life. Taking my lawyer hat off, I have gone through a lot in my life in which I had to sacrifice, I had to withhold opinions, I had to really put my head down and work. And to see somebody insult that process, and I'm sure he's really thinking about his decisions now, but to see
Mhm.
somebody insult and take that position for granted and then throw it all away, you should know better than that, especially with the field you're getting into. There is professional responsibility in law school. There's professional responsibility classes. We have to take the MPRE, which is essentially the test to make sure that you understand your professional responsibility requirements so you don't get disbarred. The standard there is that he should have known better. He went out and did it anyway. And not only did he do it once, but he did it twice. Obviously, I haven't pulled up his Instagram. I haven't pulled up his social media. He could have a lot more videos that were just leading up to this that got progressively worse. He could be a great guy. He could be a great father, a great brother, a great son, a great partner, and he just went a little bit too far. But you should know better. Our actions have repercussions, and in this day and age, with the internet and social media, a lot of people don't feel those repercussions, and they think that they're free to do and act and say things in a certain manner without getting the repercussions that truly exist in the real world.
Let's tie that back to the First Amendment then. Do you think he has a case against Mayo for letting him go? Do you think he can sue Mayo for wrongful expulsion? Because this is his First Amendment, his right to say whatever he wanted to say on social media, which is not involved in any way with his education.
As far as it ties back to the First Amendment, it's my understanding that the Mayo Clinic of Medicine is a private institution. And private institutions have a lot of leeway to do whatever the hell a private institution wants to do, as long as they're not violating certain things, as long as they're not being discriminatory in their practices. That's usually the number one thing that gets private institutions into trouble, if they're being discriminatory based on sex, creed, ethnicity, race, so on and so forth. You know, all the major players that have always been at the legal forefront. Private institutions can pretty much do whatever they want to do, and there's no recourse to it because of the standards that the private institution has. You know, previously working for an aerospace and defense company, we were a government contractor, so obviously there was a little bit of that government dynamic there, but it was still a private company. You know, if we said things that were unsavory, or if we put out opinions that made the company look bad or had negative connotation, we could have certain repercussions for that. In this instance, he doesn't have a lot of protection as far as what this private education system decides to do. If it was a public institution, then the government notion of censorship might be a little bit more prevalent in what he could claim, but there are still standards and professional responsibility that exist. Certain speech is protected. If he was stating a political opinion and got kicked out of school for a political opinion in a public university, that would be definitely different. But there are standards, especially in professions like this, such as being a lawyer, such as being a doctor, that you're given little leeway to acting out like this. I don't think there's a First Amendment cause here, and that's going to be really hard for a lot of people to come to terms with. Because again, people want to say what they want to say, and they want to do what they want to do, and they think that First Amendment free speech is a protection across all areas of life when it's not.
It sounds like if he were in a public school, it would be slightly different. He might be able to have some sort of case, but because he's in a private institution, he probably has less likely of a chance to win any sort of case if he were to bring one up.
Even with public, it's still stringent because a public university, although it's technically tied to the government, and we went to the University of Texas as a public state institution, generally speaking, you can have those political views, you can have certain criticisms, but you're still held to a standard of speech that undermines professional licensing. At least from a legal perspective, when we applied to the State Bar of Texas, we had to do a whole professional licensing review. Do we have the appropriate character to be a lawyer? They looked at our history, our criminal history, if we had any. They asked about our drug history, if we had any. They asked about any things in our past that would make us unfit to be a lawyer. I would think under all medical school standards, there is this professional character responsibility on each student. You could make the claim that there's a First Amendment claim, but I also think that's going to get tossed out because of the very nature of the professional standards that you're held to.
I'm just thinking back to my medical school days. I know that there's a code of conduct handbook that we each get that we actually sign and say that we've read through it. And I'm sure 99% of students don't actually read through, but I'm sure somewhere in there it talks about professionalism and how it can get to expulsion. But the other thing that I'm thinking of is that he kind of forced Mayo's hand in this situation, because if Mayo doesn't do anything and allows this student to graduate, and then he 5 years down the line has some sort of negligence to a female patient, it's going to fall back onto Mayo for originally not doing something when he showed signs at the beginning.
Yeah, whether that's true legal repercussions or just reputational repercussions. Sometimes it is the court of public opinion and not the court of law that brings you down. If he has leeway now to do what he wants, maybe next time he is violating HIPAA standards because he's filming a patient. Maybe he's violating hospital rules because he's filming inside the hospital. Maybe he's in the operating room and he busts out his phone and starts doing a TikTok dance while the patient is under anesthesia right next to him, half naked. He thinks he can get away with one thing, and it opens the door to all the other realms of funny content that he can do. And next thing you know, now you're facing liability on a grand scale, not just for him as a doctor, but for the other doctors that may oversee him, his peers, the nurses and physician assistants that are underneath them, as well as the hospital system as a whole. This guy is a walking liability, an absolute walking liability.
It just shows poor judgment. I agree with what Mayo supposedly did. I don't think we have confirmation on the expulsion, but I assume that it has happened. But how do you think that this affects our podcast? Do you feel like it changes your perspective on how we speak about certain topics or things that maybe we want to try to avoid in the future at all? What do you think?
I'm in a unique situation because I am a business owner. I am my own manager. I am my own boss, although sometimes I think my wife is my boss. But when it comes
She
down,
is your boss.
she is. But when it comes down to the things I put out there, I must understand that if I say things, if I make posts online, those could come back and bite my real estate investment company in the ass, because you could have negative reviews, you could have people complain and never even have an interaction with me. That's the thing about accountability and repercussions. When you're sitting behind the keyboard, you are allowed to do and say a lot of things anonymously. I can then have reviews on my website or reviews on Yelp, which isn't an accurate representation. And I may never know who put it out there. I may never know the name or face of the person. They could literally be on the other side of the world and not even in this country. You, on the other hand, I do worry about your position at times because of the matter of you trying to be successful in a hospital system, working with students, working with other doctors, working with peers, because things can be taken out of context. Things can be put forth in negative lights. It'd be really easy at this point in life to have one of your critical viewers release something negative about you. That never happened. So I do get worried about your profession. But the thing that we've talked about that we've always tried to hold ourselves to is we try to give facts. We try to remove bias. And when we do have bias, we try to at least acknowledge it. And we try to have a good conversation back and forth and almost work through the problem. I think an area that concerns me, and this showed up in our clip that went viral, is that within a hypothetical, we had a lot of people that just saw the 1 minute clip and the clip was taken out of context. There was a much larger conversation within the podcast that was also built on previous podcasts before that got lost in translation because people just saw the 1 minute clip. We want to bring people in. We want to bring people to our content, to our podcast, to our YouTube videos to engage and bait them in with these clips in hopes that it's a commercial, it's a trailer, it's, hey, come watch us. And then if they don't take the time to really follow through, things can be just taken completely out of context. How do you feel about it? I know that obviously as a doctor, you do have concerns because you don't want to come across as negative to patients or your workforce, but what's your opinion on it?
I've always been hesitant to post online because I'm not the most eloquent person out there. And I always want to make sure that I'm posting things that are appropriate for me, for my kids, if they were to see any of these clips in the future, but also patients. Patients with the easy access to the internet nowadays, everyone can see clips and take things out of context. And we had already mentioned this at the beginning, but that's why I'm happy to have you as my co host on this podcast, because then we check each other's work, make sure that, hey, you said something a little awkward or something that a little inappropriate. Let's probably remove that or change it or adjust it a little bit. So I appreciate that back and forth that we have. That's why our podcast, I hope, will continue to grow as we continue to dive into these deeper, hard conversations. But so far, we've done fairly well, keeping it fairly factual and neutral. And you're right, that one clip that did go viral, I had some stress behind it. I had some anxiety about what sort of comments were going to be left and was going to be received in a good light or in a bad light. There's always that concern.
And it's funny with that specific clip, it was a true hypothetical of me just asking you a question saying, what if you did this? It would be the equivalent of me saying, what if we plan to move to Mars? How do you see it going? And it was taken out of context with certain individuals and other individuals completely understood, which goes back to this student's post. He's probably stating things that a lot of doctors and nurses and medical staff can relate to, but he's doing it in such a manner that there has to be those repercussions. We both work with a lot of students and we obviously have a lot of peers. What would your advice be to the next generation or even your peers when they're posting online, they're making funny videos, they're trying to do content? What's your advice to them as far as where that line is and showing the personality versus showing the comedy versus, hey, you're also a professional that should be held to the highest standard?
Honestly, I put myself into my kids' shoes and my parents' shoes. Would they be embarrassed or would they be hurt by watching the video or the clips that I put out? That's what I do. And then in the editing process, I also sleep on it. I'll edit one day and maybe give it 2 to 3 days before I re-edit, because I want to make sure that I'm coming to it with a fresh set of eyes. Maybe one day I felt like this content or this discussion was really good, but then the next day it didn't go over so well. I always give it some time so that I can troubleshoot and review. And that's how I do my day-to-day life as well. When I talk to patients, I am constantly laying out the plan, but then I always revisit the plan and say, hey, these are our options. Do you want to review and maybe any changes there? There's constantly back and forth conversations between you and me, between others. And I always recommend that anyone that is going to be willing to post online, that they have at least someone there, an editor, or have a process in editing to make sure that you don't do something like this fourth year medical student and completely turn your life upside down just because of a couple of clips that you posted.
To elaborate on that even further, you also want to make sure that the person that is giving you feedback or editing is somebody that you trust, because some people just want to see the world burn. Some people want the person that is going to push the red button. They don't want to do it themselves, but they say, hey, go push it. Go, oh yeah, you'll be fine. Just push the red button. But overall, I would definitely agree. You have to put yourself in the position of, this is what the expectation of me is going to be. This is the responsibility that I have. The old Spider-Man quote, with great power comes great responsibility. What are the repercussions going to be if I post something like this? Now, you can't plan for everything because everybody is going to have an opinion, whether it's positive, negative, or whether there's just trolls out there that just want to get under your skin, which we saw a lot of in the comments. But overall, you just have to recognize your intent. Like I said, with this student, if his intent is to get 1 million billion followers and he wants to make money off of his Instagram, just edgy content about medicine and his experience as a med student trying to be a doctor, okay, do your thing, man. But you got to be prepared for the repercussions, which is, well, you're not actually going to be a doctor now. People just need to think about that. Everyone's going to have an opinion. You just have to be prepared for the backlash that could occur. I definitely want to leave the audience with, again, not legal advice, but as far as First Amendment protections go, just be aware that it's government censorship. Mostly private institutions can do what they want, especially when it comes to your employment, your education, signing codes of conduct, signing, student policies or agreeing to certain things. If you're ever concerned about what you can or cannot do, go to HR, go to student and faculty advisors, and just check. If you're worried about something, just go get eyes on it before it happens, because sometimes it's better to just ask permission first so you know exactly where you're going to land. But with that, final thought from you, Long, is this guy redeemable? Can he, within his position of being so close to graduation, can he find redemption? Can he go to another medical school, finish it out? And if his dream is to be a doctor, check and adjust and find his way into being a doctor?
I don't think that there's any hope for him, honestly. If it was one clip, sure, but it was two clips, and there was so much backlash. I don't know if he's going to be able to recover from it. It's unfortunate for sure. Obviously, he got into Mayo, which is a really good medical school, so he had the smarts to do it. But it's unfortunate that the social media side of our modern world is the downfall of his doctoral career.
I'm a believer in second chances, and I'm a believer in changing for the better. Maybe he'll get a second chance. Maybe a medical school will take a shot, but you also have to proceed with caution, because you do it once, you're probably going to do it again and again and again. Obviously, in a capitalistic society, I wish this guy nothing but the best, but I think that this should be a cautionary tale to everybody out there who, whether you're trying to be a doctor, a lawyer, a business person, a veterinarian, a zookeeper, whatever it is, you just need to understand how your private actions could impact public perception and have public repercussions. So we appreciate your time on the Medical Legal Brief, where medicine meets the law. This is a super fun conversation. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the breakdown. If you want to see more content like this, where we break down TikTok videos or social media videos, please let us know in the comments. And if you haven't, like, subscribe, follow, do all the things. New episodes airing every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Central Time. We hope to see you there.
Yes, we're doctors. Yes, we're lawyers. No, this podcast is not medical or legal advice. Do not take anything we say as a reason to perform your own heart surgery, represent yourself in court, or diagnose your neighbor's rash. This is for entertainment only. Think of it like hanging out with your smartest, wittiest friends, not a substitute for an actual appointment. If you act on anything we say without talking to your own professional, that's on you. Seriously, don't do that.